Today is November 12th. It's the 317th day of the year, and this is the On This Day podcast. Today is World Pneumonia Day, observed every year since 2009 to raise awareness about pneumonia, one of the leading killers of children under the age of 5 around the world, and to advocate for global action to prevent and treat the deadly illness. It is preventable. There are vaccines for the most common strains of the diseases that cause pneumonia: pneumococcus, Hib, whooping cough, and the measles. Clean water and sanitation goes a long way too. And of course, washing your hands. The easiest, most efficient, and my favorite way to stay healthy. It's something you can do right now while you're listening to this show to celebrate World Pneumonia Day. Just like me. On this day in 1970, Oregon Highway Division engineers tackle a whale of a problem. 3 days earlier, the carcass of an 8-ton sperm whale washes ashore on the beach near Florence, Oregon. Over the course of a couple days, the remains begin to rot and smell pretty foul. In 1970, the beaches in Oregon fall under the jurisdiction of the Highway Division, and they're concerned not only about the horrendous stench, but about people climbing on the whale. And they're concerned that the body of the whale will bloat so much that it might burst. As Paul Linman of TV station KATU reports, the Highway Division engineers are at a loss for what to do with the rotting remains. It can't be buried because it could be uncovered. It can't be cut up and then buried because no one wants to cut it up. And it can't be burned. So Highway Division engineer George Thornton consults with the U.S. Navy and decides to treat the carcass the way they would a boulder. Thornton decides to blow it up. So on this day in 1970, the Highway Division trucks in 20 cases of dynamite. They're 50 pounds each. That's half a ton of explosives in all. They dig holes and place the explosives under the 45-foot whale, strategically placing the dynamite so the force of the blast will propel the pieces towards the ocean to be swept away in the high tide. They don't expect there to be much left, but what is left, they figure the seagulls, who've been hanging around all day, they figure the seagulls will eat it. And then if there's still any bits and pieces left after the scavengers feast, the highway workers will bury that in the sand. At least, that's the plan. It takes them a couple hours to plant the explosives, and while that's happening, a crowd forms, about 75 people. Among them is businessman Walter Humanhofer. According to reports, Walter is a military veteran who's experienced with explosives, and he tells engineer Thornton he thinks that's an awful lot of dynamite they're using. But Thornton has a plan, and he's sticking with it. Bystanders are ordered to move back a quarter of a mile. Walter moves the furthest away of them all. And then Thornton gives the signal to initiate the blast. Let's go to Paul Linman and KATU for more.
Hey, look at All right, Fred, you can take your hands out of your ears. Here comes pieces of mine.
Our camera stopped rolling immediately after the blast. The humor of the entire situation suddenly gave way to a run for survival as huge chunks of whale blubber fell everywhere. Pieces of meat passed high over our heads while others were falling at our feet. The dunes were rapidly evacuated as spectators escaped both the falling debris and the overwhelming smell. A parked car over a quarter of a mile from the blast site was the target of one large chunk. The passenger compartment literally smashed. Fortunately, no human was hit as badly as the car. However, everyone on the scene was covered with small particles of dead whale. As for the success of the effort, well, the seagulls who were supposed to clean things up were nowhere in sight, either scared away by the explosion or kept away by the smell. That didn't really matter. The remaining chunks were of such a size that no respectable seagull would attempt to tackle anyway. As darkness began to set in, the highway crews were back on the beach burying the remains, including a large piece of the carcass which never left the blast site.
As Larry Bacon writes the next day in the Eugene Register-Guard newspaper, "It was a beautiful day to blow up a whale. And boy, did they ever. It's an incredible explosion that blows up some of the whale on this day in 1970. Most of the carcass still remains there on the beach, but the blast is spectacular. It launches blubber over 100 feet into the air, the blubber showering down on the crowd of spectators a quarter of a mile away, who moments after marveling at the display are covered in whale remnants and stink. And one car in the parking lot is crushed by a huge piece of once-was whale. That car belongs to Walter Humanhofer, the guy who warned them they're using too much dynamite. That guy. It's his brand new Oldsmobile that's demolished. And according to some reports, Walter has just purchased the car from a Eugene, Oregon car dealer who's running a, quote, get a whale of a deal promotion. Walter tells reporter Larry Bacon, quote, my insurance company's never going to believe this. And even though the event that becomes known as the Exploding Whale in Florence, Oregon, is an absurd catastrophe, Highway Division engineer George Thornton is quoted in the paper as saying, quote, he went just exactly right. There are 49 days left in the year. On This Day is produced by me, Dave Schultz. Thank you very much for listening. I appreciate all the likes, all the shares, all the tweets, the retweets, all of that. You know I do, but I just want to say it again. I really do appreciate it. It helps the show, helps spread the word, helps more people learn about the show that you already love. Help them, help you, help them. No, that doesn't make any sense. If you love it, they're going to love it too. That's what I meant to say. Anyway, share the show. Follow along on Twitter at OnThisDayPod. Again, that's at OnThisDayPod. Or Facebook /OnThisDayPodcast. And if you're still listening, talk to you tomorrow.